I used to sleepwalk as a kid. Last week, my neighbor said I visited her again. When I was 7, my mom found me standing barefoot in the backyard at 3 in the morning, staring up at the sky with my arms hanging stiff by my sides. The way she tells it, my eyes were closed and my lips were moving like I was whispering to someone. Or something that wasn't there. I never remembered it. That was the worst part. Waking up with dirt under my nails or mud on my feet, having no idea how it got there. My mom said I was like a ghost drifting through the house at night. The doctors called it benign parasomnia. Harmless, supposedly. I outgrew it by the time I was 11. Or at least that's what I thought. Started again last week. At least that's when I found out it never really stopped. And if you think that's bad, you won't believe what happened next. Miss Evelyn from next door is the one who told me. She's 83, maybe 84 now. She's lived in that same sun-bleached yellow house since before I was born. We've always been on good terms, neighborly hellos, trading Christmas cookies, the occasional driveway chat. So I was surprised when she knocked on my door just after sunrise, still in her robe, holding a thermos like her hands needed something to keep from shaking. Her voice trembled, but not from the cold. "You came to my porch last night," she said. "You knocked 5 times, then just stood there." I laughed at first, thought it was a mix-up, maybe a prank. "I think you've got the wrong guy, Miss Evelyn. I was asleep all night." She didn't blink. "I know. That's what makes it worse." I tried to brush it off, but something about the way she said it chilled me. That's what makes it worse. Like she'd seen something she wasn't supposed to. Like it hadn't just been someone who looked like me. It was me. She went back home after that. Didn't want to talk anymore. But she left her thermos behind, still full of hot tea, trembling faintly on my porch railing. That night I didn't sleep well. I kept replaying her words in my head. I told myself it had to be a misunderstanding. That maybe some teen from the neighborhood had broken into my backyard and tried to scare her, and she just thought it was me. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The next morning, I noticed smudges on the inside of my sliding glass door. 5 oval-shaped streaks, like someone with damp fingers had pressed against the glass. I live alone. Later that day, I went back to Miss Evelyn's to clear things up. I figured we could have a laugh about it, maybe find the real culprit on her old security camera. She hesitated at first, then invited me in. Her house still smelled like rosewater and old wood, the way it always had. But something was different. She didn't offer me cookies this time, didn't smile. She brought me to the kitchen and pulled up the security feed on her tiny monitor. It was grainy and black and white, time-stamped at 2:11 a.m. First, the porch was empty, just the swing swaying a little in the breeze. Then, from the left side of the frame, a figure walked into view. Me, barefoot, shirtless, pajama pants hanging loose at my hips. I walked with a slow, swaying rhythm, like someone underwater, like my legs were moving, but they didn't know why. I reached the door and knocked. Once, twice, 3 times, 4, 5, exactly 5 knocks, each one spaced apart by the same number of seconds, as if I were keeping time to some unheard melody. Then I just stood there, stared straight ahead, and smiled. It didn't look like a normal smile. My mouth stretched wider than I remembered being capable of. My teeth gleamed in the porch light. It was the kind of smile that didn't reach the eyes because my eyes were still closed. Miss Evelyn paused the footage. "I didn't answer the door," she said softly. "When I checked an hour later, you were gone. No footsteps, no sound. You just disappeared." I asked her if I could get a copy of the footage. She shook her head. "I deleted it." "What? Why?" Her hands trembled again. "I don't want it in my house." I left without arguing. What was I going to say? That I wanted to re-watch the video of myself acting like something out of a nightmare? That night, I set up a camera in my bedroom. It was a leftover from when I used to stream games online during the pandemic. Still worked fine. I aimed it at my bed and hit record before turning off the light. Then I waited. I don't remember falling asleep, but I remember waking up. I woke up because I couldn't breathe. My lungs were working, but it felt like the air wasn't there. I sat up with a gasp, chest heaving, skin clammy with sweat. It was pitch black. The bedside clock read 2:12 a.m. I checked the camera the next morning. At first, it was unremarkable. Me shifting in bed, flipping from one side to the other. Normal stuff. Then, at 2:09 a.m., I sat up in one smooth, unnatural motion, and I stared directly into the lens. My eyes were open, wide open, but my pupils didn't track. I didn't blink. I didn't move. I just sat there, eyes locked on the camera for 6 full minutes. Then the screen glitched. For half a second, the image pixelated, and I was gone. The bed was empty. The camera kept rolling. At 2:19 a.m., the footage glitched again, and I was back, lying down, same position, eyes closed. When I woke up, I felt like I hadn't slept at all. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what I found at the front door. A small, rusted key sitting neatly on the doormat, worn smooth from time. 5 shallow notches etched into its shaft. I don't know what it opens, but I brought it inside, and I kept it. I didn't sleep the next night. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that video frame. Myself sitting bolt upright, eyes open, staring dead into the lens like I was waiting for something, or someone, and the key. I kept it on the kitchen table, not because I wanted to keep it close, but because I didn't want to forget it was real. It had weight, cold to the touch. I must have picked it up and set it down a dozen times that day. Sometimes I'd look away for a minute, glance back, and convince myself it had shifted slightly, turned a little, like it was slowly aligning itself to something I couldn't see. I tried to rationalize everything. Maybe I'd started sleepwalking again after all these years. Maybe stress or some buried trauma was bringing it back. But that doesn't explain the video. The way I vanished from frame, the footprints on the inside of the glass, the key, and something else had changed. The house felt different. I know how that sounds, but it did. The air had a density to it, like humidity but colder. Like walking into a sealed room where someone had just been speaking but stopped the second you arrived. That night I heard noises. First it was the hallway, soft creaks, like footsteps that were too light to be mine. Then the bathroom door clicked shut, even though I never closed it. Then, at 2:11 a.m. exactly, I heard 5 slow knocks. Not at the front door this time. At my bedroom wall. I was fully awake, lights off, lying still in bed. The knocks came from the side of the room that bordered the backyard. There was nothing on the other side of that wall but a garden bed and a decaying fence. No porch. No windows. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. My chest burned with the pressure of holding still. 5 seconds passed. Then I heard the sound of something dragging across the floorboards just outside the room. Like nails or fingertips, being scraped slowly across wood. Then silence. I sat there in bed for the next hour, not daring to move. The key sat on my nightstand, and in the moonlight leaking through the blinds, I could see it vibrating. Just slightly. Enough that I thought I was imagining it. But I wasn't. The next morning I called my doctor. Told her I was experiencing sleepwalking again. Asked if I could come in for a sleep study. She asked when the last episode occurred. I lied. Told her it had just started. She said the soonest she could get me in was in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. I wasn't sure I'd last 3 days. That evening I got another visitor. This time it wasn't Miss Evelyn. It was a man I didn't recognize. Mid-40s maybe. Gaunt face, pale eyes, thinning hair combed back so tightly it looked like a mask. He stood on my porch and didn't knock. Just waited. When I opened the door, he smiled. Not a friendly smile. The kind you give someone when you know something they don't. "You're the one with the key," he said. I didn't answer. 5 notches, he continued. Eyes darting toward the table where the key still Saturday, "You've seen it now. That means it's begun." I stepped back, instinctively reaching for the door handle. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said. "I think you've got the wrong house." He chuckled, but there was no humor in it. No one ever knows at first. That's part of it. The forgetting. Then he did something that made my blood run cold. He raised his right hand and knocked 5 times on the air between us. like there was an invisible door between us, and he knew exactly where it was. Each knock echoed louder than it should have. Like they weren't just in my ears, they were inside my skull. I slammed the door in his face. He didn't knock again, didn't call out. When I looked through the peephole 30 seconds later, he was already gone. I checked the street. Empty. I checked my backyard. Nothing but shadows. I didn't eat dinner that night. Didn't turn on the TV. I just sat in the dark living room watching the key. Waiting. At 2:09 a.m. The camera in my bedroom clicked on by itself. I'd left it unplugged. The LED glowed red. Tiny, blinking eye. I stayed where I was, frozen in the living room chair. And that's when I heard it again. 5 knocks. But this time it came from inside the house. The bedroom door. Then something moved past the hallway. I didn't see it. Not clearly. Just a shape barely darker than the shadows. Gliding past the entrance to the kitchen. No footsteps. No sound. Then silence. I don't remember falling asleep, but I woke up hours later, still in the chair, heart hammering like I'd run miles. The key was gone from the table. I found it in the hallway, sitting on the floor, pointing toward the back door, as if it wanted to show me something. That was the last night I stayed in the house. I packed a bag and left that morning. Drove to a cheap motel off the interstate. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Didn't bring the key. But that night, it was on the motel dresser, waiting. I stared at the motel dresser like it might move on its own. The key lay there in the same position I'd last seen it. 5 rusted notches, a faint crescent scratch near the base, still cold to the touch. I hadn't packed it. I was sure of that. I had left it on the hallway floor back at the house, right where I'd found it pointing toward the back door. And yet, here it was. Part of me wanted to throw it out the window. The other part didn't want to touch it again. I sat on the edge of the bed, motel sheets stiff with bleach, TV murmuring in the background but making no sense. I hadn't slept in nearly 48 hours. I could feel it tugging at my perception, loosening the thread between what I was seeing and what I believed was real. I turned the key over with a pen from the nightstand. On the underside, I saw something I hadn't noticed before. Scratched into the metal, so faint it almost blended into the rust, were 3 letters. R.P.S. No idea what it meant, but it was there and it hadn't been before. I didn't sleep that night either. Not because of the key. Not entirely. It was the sound. At exactly 2:11 a.m. the power in the room flickered. Just once. The light dimmed, the TV glitched to static, and in that moment, I heard it again. 5 knocks. Not from the door. From beneath the bed. My breath hitched. I didn't move. I just listened. Silence followed. I waited until sunrise to look. There was nothing under the bed. No scratches on the floor. No gaps in the frame. But the room felt heavier afterward. Like something had been there and left its residue behind. I checked out that morning. Didn't even ask for a refund. I just drove anywhere, nowhere. I ended up at a diner 2 towns over, nursing a coffee and trying to convince myself I wasn't losing my mind. That's when I remembered Miss Evelyn. She'd seen me on her porch before all this started. She'd watched the footage, deleted it, said she didn't want it in her house. She'd known something was wrong. I hadn't seen her since that morning on the porch. I drove straight to her place. Her curtains were drawn. No lights, but her car was still in the driveway. I knocked once, twice. No answer. I knocked again. 3, 4, 5. The door creaked open. Hadn't been latched. Miss Evelyn? I called into the darkness. It's me. From next door. Nothing. I stepped inside. The air was thick. Musty, but sweet. Like potpourri gone sour. The living room was undisturbed. TV off. A half-finished knitting project draped over the arm of the couch. Then I heard a sound. From the back of the house. A slow, steady tapping. Not like footsteps. More like something dragging across the floor. Like fingernails. Or bone. I called her name again, more urgently this time. Still no response. I stepped down the hallway toward the bedrooms. And froze. Every door had 5 red marks scratched into it. Vertical lines. Fresh. Not painted. Scraped. They formed a crude tally, like something had been counting. I turned to leave, but then I heard her voice. Not far. Just behind the last door. She was whispering. I stepped closer, heart hammering. She was saying the same phrase over and over. Don't answer. Don't answer. Don't answer. Don't answer. I knocked once, softly. Miss Evelyn, it's me. Her whispering stopped. Then came a different voice. Low, male, guttural, mimicking hers. Don't answer. I turned and ran. Didn't stop until I reached my car. Didn't breathe until the house was a shrinking blur in the rearview mirror. That night, I slept in my car, parked behind a gas station just off the highway. I dreamed for the first time in days. I was in a long hallway lined with doors, each door marked with 5 notches. At the end of the corridor was a mirror. When I reached it, I saw myself. But I wasn't alone. My reflection smiled. Its eyes stayed closed, and its hand reached toward the glass, holding the key. When I woke up, my hands were curled around the steering wheel like they'd been gripping it through the night. My knuckles ached from the tension. A thin crust of dried sweat clung to the collar of my shirt. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, and the horizon bled orange across the sky. The gas station behind me was quiet, but I could see the silhouette of a clerk mopping the floor inside. I looked over at the passenger seat. The key was there. It was sitting upright on its end, impossibly balanced, with the notched side pointed toward me. I didn't touch it. Not yet. I just stared at it, trying to feel something. Fear, frustration, even anger. But I felt numb, like something in me had already surrendered to it, like I was only catching up with what it already knew. Later that morning, I drove home. I don't know why. Maybe I was tired of running, or maybe I just wanted to see if the place had changed without me. Like returning to a crime scene to prove to yourself the bloodstains were real. I pulled into the driveway and shut the engine off. For a long while, I just sat there, door cracked open, breathing in the stale scent of old upholstery and plastic. Eventually, I walked up to the house. There were no footprints in the dust on the porch. No signs of intrusion. But the minute I stepped inside, the air felt wrong again. Too still, too quiet. I looked around. Everything was in the same place. The house hadn't moved, but it felt smaller, like the walls had crept inward while I was gone. Then I heard a whisper. Just one word. Come. It came from the hallway. I turned, slow as ice cracking underfoot. There was no one there, but I followed it anyway. It led me to the back door, to the spot where I'd first found the key, lying on the floor, pointing toward the garden. I stepped outside. It was cooler than I expected. Morning dew glistened on the grass like a skin of sweat, and the fence at the back of the yard cast a long, bent shadow toward me. I walked past the flower beds, past the compost bin, past the old rusted bird feeder that had never once attracted a bird. Then I saw it. A small hatch. It was part of the foundation. I'd never noticed it before, tucked behind the rhododendrons, half buried in dirt. It looked like a crawlspace door, wooden, rotted, with rusted hinges and a steel lock. The kind of thing you'd ignore for decades until something made you look. The key burned cold in my pocket. I pulled it out and held it in front of the lock. My hands shook, not from fear, from anticipation. It fit perfectly. The door creaked open. The space beneath the house was darker than I expected. Not the dusty crawlspace I'd imagined, but something deeper. Something dug out, expanded. The air inside wasn't just stale, it was damp, breathing, like the lungs of the house were exhaling slowly through that opening. I stepped down the narrow stairwell, ducking as the ceiling dipped. There were carvings on the walls. Not words. Symbols. The same ones I'd seen scratched into Evelyn's doors. 5 lines. Always 5. Always fresh. The tunnel curved, then opened into a small room. And that's where I saw it. A mirror. Not just any mirror, it was identical to the one from my dream. Same iron frame. Same smudged edges. It stood free on the far side of the chamber, propped up on a wooden crate. The floor around it was bare dirt, but something had been swept into the soil. Shapes, circles, spirals, geometric patterns that almost looked like they were moving if you stared too long. I approached. My reflection stared back at me. Only it didn't move when I did. It blinked when I didn't. His head tilted first. I recoiled. But then something changed. The glass rippled. Not like water. Not like a movie effect. More like skin twitching. Like goosebumps rising under the surface of a body. My reflection's smile widened. The same too-wide grin I'd seen on the porch camera. The eyes opened fully, black, pupilless, empty. It raised its hand and pointed behind me. I turned. There was no one there. But on the ground, in the dirt, something was protruding just slightly. I brushed the soil away. Another key. This one was smaller. Brass. Tarnished. No notches. But on its head, engraved in delicate script, were 3 letters. R. P. S. The same letters from the first key. I turned back to the mirror. It was empty now. Just a reflection of the chamber behind me. I took the key and left. I tried to look it up. R. P. S. I assumed it was an acronym. Place maybe. A name. But everything I found led to dead ends. Then I got a hit. It wasn't on Google. It was in an old forum thread from a defunct website archived on the Wayback Machine. The thread was titled, R. P. S. Markings on old keys, help identifying? The user had uploaded a photo of a nearly identical key. Same tarnished brass. Same engraving. He said he found it in his grandmother's attic inside a locked music box. The thread was short, just 3 replies. The last one read, R.P.S. equals Red Path Society. Don't follow it. Don't keep the key. Burn it if you can. Bury it if you can't. And never ever use it. That reply was posted 15 years ago. The user never replied after that. His account was deleted. That night, I took both keys and drove to a public park 20 miles away. Brought a shovel. Waited until the sun was down. Then I found a patch of woods off-trail and started digging. Took me nearly an hour. I buried the keys 3 feet down, packed the dirt over them, and left without looking back. When I got home, I showered, locked every door, and left the lights on. I was asleep before my head hit the pillow. For the first time in days, I slept dreamlessly. Until I didn't. In the dream, I was back in the tunnel. The mirror stood in front of me, taller this time. Its surface pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat beneath glass. My reflection stepped forward. But I didn't. It reached into its pocket and pulled out the key. Not 1, 2. It held them up like a prize. Then the mirror shattered from the inside. A sound so loud it felt like lightning split my skull. I fell backward in the dream and kept falling. Through the earth, through my bed, through the air itself. I woke up screaming and sitting up. At exactly 2:11 a.m. The keys were on my nightstand, covered in dirt. They were right where I left them, or rather right where I had tried to leave them. Side by side, the 2 keys rested on my nightstand in perfect symmetry. The notched iron one, cold and blackened with time. The smaller brass one, etched with R. P. S. Flecked with particles of earth that still clung to the grooves in its head. My hands trembled as I reached out to touch them. Both were dry. Despite being buried beneath damp forest soil for hours, both were bone dry. It was like the ground had given them back. I didn't sleep after that. I sat upright in bed until the light through the blinds shifted from blue to gray, until the birds outside returned to their morning squabbles and the house stopped sounding like it was holding its breath. And all the while, the keys waited. By the time the sun was fully up, I had made a decision. I needed answers. The library in town had an archive room, one I hadn't stepped into since my college days. Back then, it was mostly for genealogy projects or nosy old women trying to prove their neighbors were bootleggers during Prohibition. Now it was where I went to learn about the Red Path Society. There was almost nothing in the digital records. No books, no articles, no academic studies. But when I asked the archivist if she'd ever heard of it, She gave me a strange look, part hesitance, part suspicion, and pointed me toward the microfiche machine. She was silent for a moment, then said, "Try the Edgewater County Register. Look around 1974. I didn't ask why. Just loaded the reel and started scrolling. Took 2 hours. 2 hours of grainy columns, fading ink, and dead people's wedding announcements before I found anything. The headline was tucked halfway down the page, no larger than a school fundraiser blurb. Local man found dead inside historic tunnel. Police suspect foul play. Raymond Polk Simmons, age 44, was discovered early Tuesday morning by a group of hikers near the old Holloway mining access tunnel. Simmons, a retired railway technician and longtime resident of the Edgewater area, was reportedly found kneeling in front of an iron-framed mirror that had been left in the tunnel decades earlier by an unknown party. Authorities are treating the death as suspicious. A key marked R.P.S. was found clutched in the man's hand. I sat back. Raymond Polk Simmons. R.P.S. It wasn't a society. It was a man. Or maybe it was both. That night I went back. I knew how that sounds. I knew it was stupid, reckless, dangerous, whatever word you want to use. But it wasn't about curiosity anymore. It was about inevitability. This wasn't just something I had stumbled into. It was something I had returned to. The hatch behind my house creaked open before I touched it. The air in the stairwell wasn't just damp this time. It was wet and warm, like I was stepping into something alive. The tunnel had changed. Where before there had been carved lines, there were now markings. Not etched, not drawn, branded. Into the wood, into the stone, into the very air. And at the end, where the mirror had stood, there was now a door. Old, heavy, red. I didn't remember it being there before. I would have sworn it wasn't. But there it was, wide as a coffin stood on end, with a single iron handle. And a keyhole. I didn't need to guess which key it wanted. I reached for the notched one. As soon as I slid it into the lock, the walls pulsed. Not vibrated, pulsed. Like a heartbeat, like a breath being held just a second too long. The key turned on its own. The door opened. There was nothing behind it but a hallway of mirrors. Each one angled toward me. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Each one showing me from a different moment. One showed me sleepwalking, barefoot in the grass. Another, standing at Evelyn's porch with that too-wide grin. Another, curled up in bed while something leaned over me in the dark, its face just out of frame. Then I saw one where I was a child, 7, maybe 8, standing barefoot in the woods, holding something, the same key. I stepped forward. The mirrors didn't reflect anymore, they watched. One of them moved. I mean, it literally shifted, like something behind it adjusted the glass, tilting it. As I stepped closer, I saw the reflection again. But it wasn't me. Not exactly. It looked like me, sure. But the eyes were wrong. Too still. Too hollow. And when it smiled, my skin prickled like it had been slapped. Because it had my teeth, but not my lips. They belonged to someone else. Someone I had forgotten. The reflection raised its hand. Held up a third key. Not iron. Not brass. This one was bone. Yellowed. Splintered. Etched with the same 5 notches. Then the mirror cracked. Hairline fissures ran across the glass like lightning bolts. And from those cracks, something began to bleed. Not red. Black. Thick and slow. The glass began to buckle, like it was no longer made of glass at all, but thin flesh stretched over something trying to escape. I turned and ran. The tunnel didn't follow the same route back. Twisted. Folded. Spun in on itself. But eventually I found the stairs. The hatch was open. The night air hit my face like a slap, and I stumbled into my backyard gasping like I'd surfaced from deep water. The house was silent, but the lights were on. Every window glowed yellow. Every light. I stepped inside, and saw me, sitting on the couch. Not sleeping. Not moving. Just waiting. He didn't look up. He didn't have to. He was smiling. 5 knocks echoed from upstairs. Then from the hallway. Then from behind me. I turned. The mirrors had followed me. One in the kitchen. One in the hallway. one in the bedroom, each one showing me different me's, doing things I didn't remember, saying things I didn't recognize, and always in the background the key, sometimes held, sometimes buried, sometimes inside something else entirely. Then they all cracked. At once, the house groaned, the power surged, and I woke up, back in bed, 2:11 a.m. alone. I turned on every light in the house. The mirrors were gone. The keys were gone. The house looked normal. Almost. I turned on the camera again just to be sure. Sat in front of it for an hour, eyes open, face blank, just like in the footage from before. Nothing happened. But when I checked the playback, I was gone. I don't sleep much anymore. I started renting rooms in town, staying at different places each night. I don't stay still for long. I've thought about leaving entirely, burning the house, changing my name, but I think it would follow me. Not just the keys, not just the tunnels. Him. I don't think it wants me gone. I think it wants me empty. A vessel, a frame, a mirror. Last week, a friend sent me a photo from a flea market in Idaho. Said he found something weird. Thought of me. It was a key. Tarnished. 5 notches. R.P.S. He asked me if I wanted it. I told him to bury it. But it doesn't matter. Because I woke up this morning. And there it was. On my pillow. Waiting. This story was completely true. Except for all the parts that weren't. Thanks for listening. That's how it happened or didn't. But if it did, don't think it couldn't happen to you. Subscribe to It Happened to Me. A new story drops daily.